Hi, I'm Dan Cortopassi. Today I'm reviewing an HO scale AC4400CW locomotive from ScaleTrains. My model is detailed and decorated for Southern Pacific in the scarlet and gray speed lettering scheme. This model is part of the ScaleTrains rivet counter line. ScaleTrains offers the rivet counter AC4400CWs in two versions. The factory direct price for the DCC ready version is $204.99. I got my DCC and sound equipped version for $299.99 direct from ScaleTrains. We'll start the model at 100 possible points. The engine is packed in a sturdy cardboard box. Opening the box reveals an owner's manual with DCC and other information. Soft foam surrounds a two-piece plastic cradle that holds the model. A packet with extra axle end caps is included. The handrails on the long hood have foam protectors. This undersill detail came off in my hand as I was handling the model. Since I may have knocked it off myself, I'm giving the model the benefit of the doubt here. This is a good box that should protect the model for storage and transport. Southern Pacific's AC4400CW locomotives were delivered between April and November 1995. A total of 279 units were delivered, the largest order in SP's history and also its last. They were numbered from 100 to 378. Some were on the roster for less than a year before the Union Pacific merger in 1996. The AC4400CW is the AC traction counterpart to GE's C44-9W. They look very similar on the outside. The main spotting feature is the large electrical inverter cabinet on the left side, which the -9s don't have. The AC4400CWs had the same 4400 horsepower prime mover as GE's C44-9W, but the AC traction motors gave these engines better pulling power. On the ACs, the Southern Pacific speed lettering on the side is a little more squished together horizontally than on some other SP engines, and the lettering style is slightly different. SP's -9s were also numbered in the 8100 series, so the three-digit numbers on the ACs is another way to tell them apart. After the UP merger, many former SP AC4400CWs retained their original paint for years. They were among the last former SP locomotives that could sometimes be spotted running around in faded scarlet and gray. I compared the model to photos of real SP AC4400s from the 1990s, and as near as I can tell, it's spot on. Photos show that the parts that look like shock absorbers appear to have been removed from one side of each truck at some point. The model has them on both sides of each truck, but that appears to be correct for the lower numbered AC units like 146 as built. I also have a ScaleTrains model of SP270, and like many of the higher numbered units, it only has these parts on one side of each truck, and the other axles have exposed spinning end caps. GE apparently changed the truck design slightly at some point during the production of these units. According to UtahRails.net, SP146 was patched to UP6189 on February 1, 2005. Photos show that it kept its SP paint until 2016 when it was repainted in the UP flag scheme. This model is an outstanding representation of this locomotive as built and as it appeared in the last days of the SP. The paint on the model is opaque and thin enough that it only slightly softens small details like the latches on the doors. The markings are crisp and most of the tiny stencils on the shell are legible with magnification. I only spotted a couple tiny voids at panel seams where there are gaps in the markings on the real units too. 146 was the only SP AC4400 to have the Southern Pacific Line shield and only on the left side. Many of the grills on the sides are photo etched. Some have details behind them, though they can be hard to see. The handrails are made of a flexible plastic that should stand up to modest handling. The stanchions are mostly straight up and down on my model when viewed from the side. The handrail behind the engineer's side of the cab is badly warped on my model. This is bad enough that I'm going to want to make a new handrail for this side, so I'm taking 5 points. My model of SP270 doesn't have this issue. Some of the side handrail stanchions have a tendency to pop out when the model is handled. They're easy enough to push back in, but I may eventually use some canopy glue to attach them more securely. The trucks have freestanding brake lines. Unlike the -9s, these engines had no obvious speed recorder on any of the axles. The center axle on each truck of SP146 has exposed end caps that rotate. In front, the engine has freestanding wire grab irons and separately applied windshield wipers. The numbers in the number boards appear to be applied under or on the back of a layer of clear plastic glazing, making them look like numbers behind glass. Lower down, the pilot has an uncoupling lever, an MU cable, hoses, and a plow that appears to be accurate. The cab side windows are tinted. They don't open. It's hard to see, but inside the cab has a complete interior. The cab has photo-etched sunshades and separately applied mirrors. In back, the model has more freestanding wire grab irons and most of the same pilot details as the front, minus the plow. The spare knuckle holders on the pilot are correct for these SP units. The corner steps have see-through perforations. While shooting this review, I knocked off one of the steps by leaning the model to the side on my workbench. My fault, but it's a good reminder to be careful when handling a model like this. Based on photos that I've found, the roof antenna arrangement is correct for these units as built. One of the few roof shots of these engines I found suggests that the strip of slightly different paint down the middle of the roof is correct. The model has a nice horn casting. The exhaust opening extends down into the roof, which adds to the realism. On the rear of the unit, the radiator grills are photo-etched and have nice depth. Underneath the sill, there's a lot of plumbing detail, though some of it is hard to see unless you turn the locomotive over. One neat feature and an industry first according to ScaleTrains is the painted wheel faces. My own preference would be for more of a dirty brown color than rusty orange, but it does save me the trouble of having to do this when I get around to weathering the model. All of the axles are powered and all the wheels pick up current. The model has ScaleTrains knuckle couplers on both ends. Looking for a match on the horizontal center line, the front coupler is at the correct height. The rear coupler is low, so I'm taking 5 points. All the wheels are in gauge according to the NMRA standards gauge. There is no body wobble. The model weighs 22.5 ounces. Drawbar pull topped out at a whopping 6.8 ounces on my force gauge, very strong for a model of this size. I had to work to hold it back while testing it. Many HO scale diesels pull in the 2.5 to 3 ounce range, so this result is outstanding. My ScaleTrains -9s, which are the same size and weight, pulled about 4.4 ounces, which is still very good, but quite a bit less than this engine. So just like the real thing, the ACs pull better than the -9s. I'm running the locomotive on DCC. The engine has an ESU LoCSound Series 5 DCC and sound decoder. I haven't changed any of the default decoder settings. Like a lot of DCC decoders, the address is set to 3 by default. F8 toggles the sound on and off, and also turns on the number boards and walkway lights. F0 turns on the headlight, which is directional. The forward headlight is on when the locomotive is set to move forward, and the rear headlight comes on in reverse. F6 turns on the ditch lights. These are also directional and only come on when the engine is set to move forward. The ditch lights flash when the horn sounds. One cool feature, and similar to something I do on my own models, is that the F14 key can be used to turn off the number boards, which are normally on. F12 dims the headlight. This also turns off the ditch lights. F2 sounds the horn. The length of the toot depends on how long the F2 key is pressed. F1 rings the bell. The model has an ESU power pack that will keep it running for a few seconds if it loses track power. F10 activates the brake function. The locomotive will decelerate according to the momentum settings programmed into the decoder and stop. Pressing F10 again releases the brake and the locomotive will start moving. F4 puts the engine in dynamic brake mode. F9 activates the drive hold feature. This can be used to simulate a heavy train starting on a grade, or a locomotive that is coasting. The locomotive runs very smoothly. With the sound off, it's pretty quiet. I used a little liquid styrene cement to reattach the rear step that I knocked loose. It took a little fiddling, but I was also able to reattach the other loose part, which fits behind the front part of this detail. In hindsight, it would have been easier to do this with the shell off. If you want to take the model apart, first remove the couplers on both ends. Now you can remove the shell. The model has contacts instead of wires to power lights that are mounted in the shell. There are no wires running between the shell and the chassis, making disassembly easier. The decoder is in the middle. It's connected to the factory light board with a 21-pin plug. If you have the DCC ready version of this model, this is where you'd install the decoder. Since it's my personal preference, I'm going to change over to KD158 whisker couplers. After removing the couplers and springs from the draft gearboxes, the KDs drop right in. The KDs both ended up a little low, so I filed the top of the draft gearboxes. I took off material until the window pane-like pattern on the top disappeared. This was enough to get the front coupler up to the right height. The rear coupler was still low, so I ended up filing the coupler mounting pad as well. These techniques would also work with the stock couplers. Let's see what we've got. One of the handrails on my model is misshaped, so I took 5 points in the paint and detail category. One of the couplers was at the wrong height, so I took 5 points in the standards and operation category. That leaves us with 90 out of 100 possible points, which would be an A- on a report card. This is a really nice model and it deserves a green signal. I think ScaleTrains did a really nice job on this model. If you're looking for some modern era motive power for your HO scale layout, then I think you might like it. If you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned and thanks for watching.